All right, back again with another video. And today we're going to be talking about something very interesting, which is likability, right? Your ability to be likable. Typically, likability comes from being yourself, being personable, being friendly, not trying too hard, just being chill, being relaxed, and talking to somebody like they're your friend, right? You want to talk to this person like they're your friend. So I made a couple of notes here and I'm going to go through them. First, what you want to do is you want to make this shift as soon as possible on the meeting to frame the conversation such that you and the prospect are allies so that you do not come across as a salesperson. I recently heard this from, I don't know who it was. Maybe it was Brian Tracy in The Psychology of Selling, but that salespeople are inherently viewed as lower status in some way because you're basically asking for something you want to take or whatever the case is. So you want to make this, you want to frame the situation as you're trying to help somebody solve a problem so that you can both benefit. Now you're going to benefit by, them investing in you and your product or service, but they're also going to invest by actually getting the product or service. And if you have a good product or service that they actually need and they're going to get their values worth, and there's no reason why you should feel guilty or strange about that or put on a front in some way. So the prospect wants you to understand and help them achieve their goal. Get on the same side of the table. So it's you want to try to visualize in your head, and I heard this from my mentor recently. You want to try to visualize in your head that you guys, when you're meeting, you're not that you're over here and your prospect is, where's my video? You're over here and the prospect is over there. You want to basically come around to the other side of the table and sit right next to your prospect, right? Just like you've seen in those commercials with the banking commercials, where you see the advisor sitting next to the person and they're both kind of like looking at the paper together, right? They're both over here and they're over here and they're both kind of with their finger pointing. It's that same concept, right? You're sitting next to your prospect and then you're going through the different options and you're trying to help them pick the best option. Now, if you only have one option, then you're basically trying to, help them. You're trying to understand their problem first. You're trying to understand what they're looking for specifically. And then what you're doing is you're trying to determine if your product or service would actually fit their needs. You're not trying to pigeonhole your product and your service into into their uh, into their life, right? So you're not trying to like extract money from them and just give them something that they may or may not need, that they may not need or they don't need, right? So you have to determine, do they need it or not? Or do they want it or not, or however you want to frame it. So that's what you have to do. In order to do that, in order to have this collaborative approach, you have to inherently be likable, right? Like if you're helping out a friend with something with a problem that he or she is having, then what are you doing? You're on their side and you're trying to figure out, how can we make this work? How can we solve this problem, type of thing. Now, sales is a little bit different because this person is not technically your friend. Like I mentioned before, it's like you may think that you're friends, but once you leave the office, they may not see you that way, especially if you've been incongruent at some point in the conversation. They'll catch it, they'll catch the inauthenticity, and they'll bounce immediately. Uh, First of all, because they don't know you, so they have no reason to say, and second of all, because you're basically trying to sell them something. So they're giving you money, and you're giving them the product or service. So it may feel to them disingenuous or inauthentic. So a couple of things that you need to do: collaborative effort, get on the same side of the table, be their ally, and be friendly. Because here's the thing, right? And I actually wrote this down too, so I want to list this off, which is likability leads to comfort. And what happens, here's the key in people, and you've heard this expression before, as far as the fortunes being in the follow-ups. This is why the fortunes are in the follow-ups. It's not just the mere fact that you're following up, right? Because people say this all the time. This is the common trope, which is that you need 12 impressions or 12 interactions, 12 touch points until somebody actually buys. Or they may not be ready, it may not be the right time. When you reach out to them, it is the right time. That's part of it. But the other part of it is, who are you, right? Especially if you're the one reaching out. Did they like you on the call? Because if they did, then if they do consider it in the future, they're probably going to consider you as opposed to some other company, because you can't control what everybody else is doing, but you can control what you're doing, right? So if you're giving somebody good energy, if you're giving them good vibes, if you're sharing a laugh or a smile, and they enjoy your company, and you're also informing them at the same time, and you realize that they're actually not going to close, and you're not aggressive and pushy, because if you're aggressive and pushy, then they won't close, because they can sense the pressure, and they can see that whatever you did on the meeting or on the call was actually a front to get them to give you their money. And once they give you a little bit of pushback, now you're more aggressive um, because you want their money, and they realize what you were doing all along, right? So you really have to take a collaborative effort and figure out, if this is not the right thing and now is not the right time, then maybe it might be in the future. And if you spent the entire time on the call being friendly and building rapport and informing them and having a great conversation, it's very likely that they're going to want to come back to you in the future as a company, because you have competitors, right? Your product or your service has competitors. It's very likely they're going to come back to you because you were that person who could connect with them. So that's why the follow-ups work. That's when follow-ups work. Now, there are situations where people don't emote or connect, and that's just their personality, so they don't really care that much about you and your personality, your character. They just want to be able to like trust you and see that you have the expertise, right? And that's good enough for them. So trust is a minimum, right? Trust and expertise and likability, right? Those three things are all important in closing deals. I think likability is, as like, if you're neutral with a certain segment of people, that's good enough. But with the majority of people, we're humans, right? We're not robots. We're not AI machines. So we want that. We like that connection, right? It feels good to smile. It feels good to laugh, right? It's a universal language. Universal language is smiling and laughing, right? Facial expressions. So keep that in mind, right? It feels good to feel good, right? Good emotions, there's a reason why we bond with those types of experiences, right? So just keep that in mind. That small segment, don't focus on that small segment, right? They're going to, their criteria are a little bit different, or a little bit more. Everybody's criteria are different, but likability to them, this is how I put, likability to them is less important than you having the expertise and the knowledge, and you inspiring trust, right? Those two things need to be there. If they don't trust you, but you have all the information, forget it. Deal is done, right? If they trust you, but you don't have all the information, they're a little bit skeptical, right? They're like, I like this guy, I trust him, but he doesn't seem to like know as much as I want him to know, right? So it's a bit, a little bit more on the fence. If they trust you, and they notice how I'm not saying respect, right? Because what is respect? Respect is generated, like the feeling of respect is generated through somebody's behavior, through their character. So it's not like they have to respect you because you have to do something to get respect, right? So it's like the saying they have to respect you in some people's minds. The reason I was saying is some people's minds that they have to, like, you know what I mean? Like, you're gonna respect me, right? And maybe like that's like an exaggeration. That's a bit of a caricature, but you get my point, right? It's like, oh, don't interrupt me, or it's this whole mindset of you need to put forth a personality that will, well, now you're fake. Now you have an inferiority complex. So you're compensating for that inferiority by acting superior. So just chill, right? Just chill the fuck out. You don't need to do that. Forget about the whole respecting. The respecting comes when you're actually a man or a woman of character. That's when that fucking comes. Okay. So they gotta trust you, and they gotta know that you have the expertise and the knowledge, right? And in certain industries, you have to have way more than they have. You have to have, in basically every question that they ask, you need to have the answers to, unless you're deferring to like a later stage in the process, right? Like if they ask you some specific part of the procedure, like what do I do for the aftercare? I'll say, well, in the stem cell treatment, for example, I'll say, well, the doctor's going to recommend some pH balanced shampoos that you can be using. but I don't know all the details of that particular area, and you don't need to, right? Those are insignificant details or less significant details. But you need to have industry specific knowledge, product specific knowledge. They need to be able to trust you, right? And the likability part that comes in because that's really what gives the whole thing color. So anybody that would be on the fence in either situations, right? Whether they trust you and they see you as a person of authority or expertise, or whether they trust you and you're kind of the person with authority or expertise, but you're not exactly where you need to be, that likability factor will come into play then, right? If you're likable but they don't trust you, forget it. Nothing works. If trust is not there, forget about everything else, right? So you better have integrity, right? You better have integrity. You can fake it if you want to, and you're not really a moral or ethical person if you do that. So just keep that in mind. And listen, is that what you want? Do you want to be that person? Do you want other people to treat you the way that you're treating other people if you're being unethical, or if you're telling lies, or if you're misleading people intentionally? No. What kind of world would that be if you were like that, right? So keep that in mind. The likability factor is basically what brings things to the surface, adds color to everything, and will push them over the edge. And that is the factor that actually sticks in their mind when you do the follow-up. So back to what I was saying before, that's the key there, right? So in the follow-up, they trusted you, you had the expertise. If you were likable, that's when it matters, right? Because they're going to remember how you made them feel, not what they were thinking at the time. They forgot about that. But they remember, man, I was around this person and I felt great. I remember meeting a guy one time. One time it was like a group of friends were watching a basketball game or something, and he was just part of the group. And this guy, he loved to laugh, right? So, I like to make jokes, I like to crack jokes or whatever the case is. And sometimes like you get a snicker or a smile or something, and you just kind of riff on things. But this guy, he just like he had the heartiest laugh, and he just loved it. And and that kind of it basically it's infectious, you know what I mean? And so that inspires more out of you, and you just remember how you feel after that. He probably remembered it, I remembered it, and we met one time and we were chilling for like a couple of hours, and that was pretty much it. But I remember that, and that was like 6 years ago or something like that. So they're going to remember how you made them feel. So when you follow up, um, then it's going to make it that much easier to close the deal. And also, it makes it more likely for them to follow up with you because they're going to be thinking about these other companies. They're like, oh, I remember Mary from so and so. She was she was great. She was really friendly and knowledgeable, and I got a good vibe from her. They're going to remember how they felt through that conversation. So just keep that in mind, and they're going to opt for you, especially if the other, if your competitors or the other companies, they didn't have all of the factors required for them to actually make the decision to go with the other company as opposed to you. Typically, people make decisions because of the people that are there, depending on the product or service. That is true, and on the industry. That is true. But that likability factor, don't underestimate that. That's really important. Let's see if I have any other notes here. Yeah, they want to go back to the person they like, given they trust them and they see them as competent in holding expertise or authority, like I mentioned. Uh, that's it, man. That's all I got. That's all I got for today. So we'll keep it short. Hope that was helpful.